There's a lot going on today. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices. Bought spices, so that they might go and anoint him. And very early, on the first day of the week, very early, when the sun had just risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, who's going to roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb so that we can go and anoint the body of Jesus with balm? But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away already. And they entered the tomb, and there was a young man dressed in white linen. Is Amani in there hiding underneath it? Oh, there she is. Hi. Come on in. This is Amani. Look at her. Look at her. A young girl dressed in a pink dress. An angel. So they saw the young man dressed in white linen sitting on the side of the tomb, and they were afraid. This is not what they expected. He said to them, don't be afraid. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified? Well, he's been raised. He's not here. Look, this is the place where they had laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he's going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you'll see him just as he told you. So they went out and fled from the tomb. And this is what the sermon's going to be about, this next phrase. For terror and amazement. Terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Terror and amazement. Oh, look at you. And we've had so much going on. I'm not going to tell you all the things I wanted to tell you. I wanted to just say something about the fact that it says when Sabbath had ended. You see, because God rests on the Sabbath. So, on the Sabbath, God did not even raise Jesus from the dead. But when the Sabbath was ended, we're back on track. I'm not going to talk about that, though. I'm not going to talk about the three women. You know, there had been three men in an earlier scene in the garden. Jesus went into the garden with Peter and James and John, and he says, hey, can you guys just for once have my back? And be there for me and stay awake. There's something bothering me. I need to pray about it, but I need to know you're there. Three men, Peter, James, and John. And now, who comes to the tomb? Three women. Three women don't desert him. Three women are there for Jesus. In Hispanic cultures, they're called Tres Marias. Three Marys. Even though Salome, her name's not Mary, but they call her Mary Salome. It makes a better song, a better ritual. Three Marys. But I'm not going to preach about that. I'm not going to preach about that young man dressed in white linen, though he is my favorite character in the whole story. Because he had been around earlier in the story of the Garden of Gethsemane. After Peter and James and John and all the disciples flee, after Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss, it says there was a young man there dressed in white, and he ran away leaving his cloak behind. I think that was the angel. But I'm not going to explain that. I'm just going to talk about terror and amazement. Terror and amazement. The Greek here is, you can figure this out. Tromos, tremble, tromos. Kai ekstasis, ecstasy. Trembling and ecstasy. The women at the tomb were filled with trembling and ecstasy. Tromos kai ekstasis. How do you get both of those in the same emotion? Terror and amazement. Now I want to change the scene and talk about how Matthew describes some of these events. We have 4 Gospels in the Bible. They each tell the story of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. They each have different details. Here's what Matthew says. From noon on, this was back on Good Friday, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. From noon till 3, darkness. About 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Then Jesus cried again and breathed his last. It says in Matthew, at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook. Rocks were split. And the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. At the death of Jesus, the earth had a grand mal seizure. And graves opened up. And this is the message of Easter. That through the death and resurrection of Jesus, the bands of death have been broken. That dear hope we have for a land that is fairer than day. And by faith we can see it afar, where our Father lies over the way, to prepare us a dwelling place there. That hope we have for the sweet by and by. It comes from this. That hope we have for a time when every tear will be wiped away. It comes from this story, the way Matthew has it. Christ is just the first to rise from the dead. And all the saints, and it already began happening back in ancient Jerusalem, through Christ are raised from the dead. I hope your Easter faith gives you a sense that you will see departed loved ones, parents, spouses, some of you children. But that's Matthew, and today we're looking at Mark. Because Mark says, don't you dare make Easter just into something that happens to corpses. Because for some of us, our Christian faith is about working out a deal so we have eternal life. Getting that all sorted out. But I want us to look at those 3 women. Because Easter has more to do than with corpses. It also has to do with living people. It's not just about life after death. It's about how you're going to live before you die. And so we're talking about terror and amazement. We're talking about trembling and ecstasy. Because it says the women were seized with trembling and ecstasy. What makes you tremble? Now, there's a fancy philosopher who once said that that's the nature of God, that God is that holy thing that's mysterious and makes you tremble, but it attracts you. That God is a combination of pulling you in and then, wow, blasting you back. The most powerful things in life can make us tremble. And, you know, as I'm saying tremble a bunch of times here, do you hear the song I want you to hear in your head? Were you there? You guys know it? Were you there when they crucified? It'll make you tremble. The most powerful things in life can make you tremble. Daniel and Kylie, getting married can make you tremble. Accepting and welcoming a child into your life can make you tremble. Launching off in some space shuttle to the outer space of the next chapter of your life can make you tremble. And that's why it does say in the Bible that the righteous survive by faith. Because good people, righteous people, don't have special knowledge. We don't know everything's going to work out. Things don't always work out for good people. But the righteous people are willing to say, Geronimo, and take the leap of faith, trusting that God will be there come what may. What makes me tremble? This week, one thing that made me tremble was terrorists taking over a college dormitory. And shooting dead everyone who didn't belong to their religion in Kenya. That made me tremble. Another thing that made me tremble this last couple of weeks is a man driving a plane into the side of a mountain. That made me tremble. But something made me tremble even more this week. I read about a man, Pope Francis, who visited on Thursday a prison in Rome. And Pope Francis knelt before the prisoners. He removed their shoes. He removed their socks. He positioned their feet over a basin of water. He took a pitcher of water and poured it over their feet. He dried their feet with a towel. And then Pope Francis kissed the feet of those prisoners. That made me tremble. Pope Francis said to them, I'm not Pope Francis. I'm Jorge Bergoglio. I'm not powerful. I'm not special. I'm not in People magazine. I'm a sinner who needs to be cleansed. And do you know what word he used? It was in Italian. I don't know Italian. Peter probably does. Where is he? Anyway, don't help me here. Jorge Bergoglio, the man, said, cleanse me, O Lord, from my filth. Filth, not just sin. For him to say that, that makes me tremble. You know, I shouldn't say this out loud. I especially shouldn't say it in church. But I kind of understand the killers in Kenya. I can understand being so angry and wanting to hurt someone. You hurt me, I'll hurt you worse. Don't tread on me. I understand that. I understand a depressed pilot. And he's on a plane with all these happy people. And they're on a vacation. And they're living this big, beautiful life. And he resents the happiness of other people when he feels so miserable. I understand that feeling. The hardest thing to understand is a man on his knees, washing the feet and kissing the feet. A man who would leave a palace for a prison. A man who was king of the universe, who emptied himself and took the form of a servant and says, I have come to serve rather than to be served. That makes me tremble. The power of the resurrection makes us tremble. Makes us tremble because it means there are new possibilities. And some of us, and I wonder if those women at the tomb were like this, some of us have said, you know, there is nothing new. There is no hope. It all turns out to, and here's a bad word, I'm not going to say it, but just imagine, you know, what's the point? I'm just going to stay in my patterns. I'm going to stay in my addictions. I'm going to stay in the little things that charm me and entertain me and pull me into myself. I'm going to keep on just running around that maze because it keeps me safe. But the empty tomb says that's not good enough because there is hope. There is possibility. There is new life. And the resurrection can make you tremble because you've been settling. You've been settling for that old, dead world you're used to. They also were ecstatic. They had ecstasy. They were trembling and ecstatic. The resurrection can bring you ecstasy. Now, I've been thinking about ecstasy this week. I got this word in my mind, right? I was thinking about all the different forms of ecstasy. And, you know, I'm an old timer, but I'm told there's a something called ecstasy, right? What would I know? But I know about physical ecstasy. I know what it likes, feels good, your body. Sometimes I know what mental ecstasy is like. There's artistic ecstasy to get to a new place in creativity. There's culinary ecstasy, right? How to gain ecstasy. This week, don't ask me how it happened, on the shuffle of my iPod, this psychedelic song came on. Pink Floyd. And it's like I heard it for the first time. It's like I finally understood it, because I was a little kid back then. I didn't really get what was going on. So this song by Pink Floyd, and it was called Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. This is a song that takes no prisoners. It wants to take you to a place you've never been before. And so the song had this real hypnotic beat. Boom, 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 boom. And it meandered and went on forever. And there were lyrics, but you couldn't make them out, and they did not tell a story. They were just supposed to put you in the mood. And I realized, what are you supposed to do with a song like this? You can't dance to it, you can sway to it. And then I remembered, what you're supposed to do is be in an auditorium that's really crowded, with lots of other people just like you, and there's a light show going on. And then you have to help it along with a little bit of some kind of drug. So you take that drug, you see those lights, and then you listen to all that music droning on forever with a bunch of other people who are members of the congregation. And you know, I finally got it and realized, wow, I bet if you did that, you would get some ecstasy. You'd feel like you just walked through a door into a new place. And then all around me, I'm aware now, there's a different kind of ecstasy out there. You can have the perfect workout, perfect body. You can cross the threshold of pain. At your local YMCA, you can do things they only used to do at Marine boot camp. And you can get to another world. You can just feel powerful and special. And that'd be a kind of ecstasy. Ecstasy. Step right up. Buy this. And you'll have it. Look like this. Have this style, this look, this brand. And you will be so fulfilled. You'll be remade, reborn. You'll live ecstatic. You could get an app for ecstasy, probably, right? And then on a hill far away stands an old rugged cross. And there's a person who hangs upon it, who says, you know, it's possible you could gain all that ecstasy and lose your soul. You could gain all that ecstasy. You can have the perfect body. You can have the perfect life. You can buy all the stuff. You can have all the swag, and you can lose your soul. And the person on that cross says, there's another door to ecstasy. And it's a door called service to others. It's a door called love. It's a door called giving to help the poor. It's a door called living for others. The ecstasy of service, of sacrificial love. Because of the old rugged cross, that's there. We live in its shadow now. Now, Tommy, you're going to go to a school next year, and its motto is non-CB. Non-CB. That's Latin. And it means not for self. Not for self. That's a kind of ecstasy, to finally get beyond yourself. But what if you got beyond yourself, not through psychedelics, not through the perfect body? You got beyond yourself by caring, by compassion, by making others your mission. Trembling and ecstatic. That's how those women lived. Suddenly awake, trembling to the responsibility and the possibility. It takes courage to live with resurrection faith, to live with it. You can't do it alone. So right now, I want you to imagine who you're going to walk away from the tomb with. The Bible suggests you do it in groups of 3. Look to your left. Well, not at the wall. Look to the person on your left. Look to the person on your right. You know, I want you to make a sacred vow to them. Not in words, but in the most holy language there is. The language of eye contact. The language you learned from your mother. The first language you ever learned. The last language you'll ever know, that you can look someone straight in the eye and say everything. And say, I've got you. You can count on me. Have you ever spoken in that language to people? That's what I want you to speak now. To your left and to your right. To say, actually, it makes me tremble to think about living with resurrection faith. Because a lot of times I'd rather just stay in my dead. I'd rather stay with all those vain things that charm me. You can't do it alone. We'll do it with each other. The sunrise of resurrection exposes all the vain things. The sunrise of resurrection burns off the dross to show our pure gold. I want you to live out of that gold. I want you to be gold this morning. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. We'll do it one more time. Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Amen.